Hey Internet, it's Matt here for the Dork Lords. Welcome to the channel. If you're new, we do all things dorkly here. So if it involves fantasy or sci-fi or superheroes or general dorkiness, we've probably got a playlist about it. So check that out. In fact, we just finished talking about Luke Cage Season 2. And I think next week we're going to start talking about Castle Rock, the series that is based on the works of Stephen King. But today, we're talking about Lord of the Rings. Why? Because I want to. There, that's the reason. So today, I thought we'd talk about what I consider to be the moment in Lord of the Rings it's the most important moment that gets the least amount of attention. So heightened importance, and people don't really think about it in terms of like, wow, that was really perhaps a nip and tuck moment. It all could have gone to hell in this one moment, and the right people were in the right place, and so disaster averted. And so that happens right after the War of the Ring ends. And you've got Aragorn, and he comes to Minas Tirith, and Faramir is the acting steward, and they meet, and Faramir gives him the rod of rulership, and Aragorn gives it right back, and they're friends, and it begins a long rule for Aragorn, and the heir of Elendil has returned to Minas Tirith and to rule over Gondor. But that wasn't a set in stone thing. I mean, the heirs of Isildur had been occasionally trying to come back and assume rule of Gondor over the years. There was Arvedui was one such heir of Elendil who came to Minas Tirith, was like, hey, I am the rightful heir. I've got the bloodlines. Here's my papers. I married someone else who's got Númenórean blood. I'm going to come back and reclaim my birthright, basically. And the current steward of Gondor at the time took it under consideration and decided, nope, thanks for playing. You stay outside those walls. I'm going to give rulership of the city over to the general who just won this war, the Kinstrife against the Wainriders, instead of this heir of Elendil. So basically, just because you had the right bloodline, a la Aragorn, doesn't mean you can just walk up to Minas Tirith and say, I'm going to sit in that throne. The stewards never sat in the throne. They always sat just off to the side of it. The stewards had basically ruled Gondor ever since, king died without an heir, stewards took over, and generations went by where the stewards were in power. And so this, when Arvedui shows up, I'm sure must have been seen as a threat to that power. Like, whoa, we're not going to just give this back. And so there was pushback. In fact, I think at that point, by the time you get to Aragorn, I think most people probably in Gondor were like, that's just a legend, blah, blah, blah. It's a nice fairy tale we can tell about stuff. But, the stewards are ruling this thing. We're good. So Aragorn shows up. And obviously with Faramir, now Faramir in the books as well is, I think, a much more noble person. Not that in the movies he's a jerk, but there are some jerky moments for Faramir, or where he's portrayed as maybe not quite the virtuous hero that he is depicted as in the books. And so and obviously Aragorn healed him in the Houses of Healing, and they have a kinship. And so when it comes time to give over rule, Faramir easily does so. But imagine, it's only because of the war itself that Faramir is in that position. If Denethor, for instance, is still alive after the War of the Ring, if he didn't commit suicide, Do you think he would give over power to Aragorn? I don't. I'd say he would say, "You stay outside those walls. If you want in here, come and get me." And we could have easily had a civil war then. You've got, the followers of Aragorn versus Minas Tirith, essentially, who are going to be in allegiance to Denethor. Now, perhaps you'd have a revolt. Who knows? But it wouldn't be good. Let's put it that way. It wouldn't. It would be the war after the war would happen. Also, assuming Boromir had lived. Let's say Denethor dies. Boromir was the firstborn son. He would have theoretically been the rightful steward at that time. And they had a pretty big rivalry. Aragorn and Boromir didn't get along incredibly well. Maybe until Boromir's death. Maybe they had a meeting of the minds at that moment when Boromir kind of regained his honor. But short of him dying, when they were just, guys in a long journey together, they weren't the best of buds. And, obviously in the movie, they had the moment at the Council of the Ring when Boromir says, Gondor needs no king. I don't think he would have given over power either. I think there might have been a moment of like, hey, what? I'm not good enough. He had a pretty big ego for one thing, and I think he probably would have had a hard time admitting that Aragorn should be on the throne. So, just saying, situations being what they are, Faramir was kind of like the only choice that perhaps was, right place, right time, civil war averted, or revolt, or whatever would have happened, but it would have been a war that was not caused by Sauron. It was just caused by, people being jerks to each other. Anyway, I feel like that moment when Faramir, abides by the prophecy and willfully allows Aragorn to assume his rightful place on the throne of Gondor is a moment that a lot of people just think was like, oh, that was a formality. Oh, sure, that's just the end beat to the books. But actually, that's a pretty huge moment when everything could have gone south. And thanks to Faramir and Aragorn, it didn't. Anyway, there you go. Just thought I'd throw that out there. A little Lord of the Rings for your weekend. Bye, everybody. See you next time.